Clash Royale has evolved so much since its early days. Imagine Cannon costing 6 Elixir, Royal Giant having the range that almost rivaled the Princess, or Rage covering the map for 3 Elixir. This is the old versus the new Clash Royale. Back in 2016, Freeze was one of the most broken spells in the game. It had a huge radius of 4 tiles, and could freeze troops for up to 8 seconds at max level. Even at level 1, it still lasted for 5 seconds, but there was a nice little catch. It didn't deal any damage, so you couldn't kill skeletons, and if your opponent tower was at 1 HP, you couldn't finish it off. Despite this, Freeze was still incredibly overpowered. The Bomber used to cost 3 Elixir, but with that, he had 50% more HP, dealt 50% more damage, and had a slightly longer range by 0.5 tiles. He was a beast on defense, especially against big pushes, thanks to his insane damage output. But in 2021, Supercell reduced his cost to 2 Elixir, saying, quote, "We want to provide more low-cost solutions to wallbreaker and spell bait decks, as well as effective support behind mid-cost win conditions like Giant and Hog Rider." Poison wasn't just about damaging troops over time, it also slowed them and towers down by 25%. It was hands down the most broken spell in 2016, with Poison decks ruling the arenas for months. That is, until Poison was finally nerfed. Can you imagine the cannon costing 6 Elixir? Back in the early days of Clash Royale, it had a much larger range of 7 tiles, triple the HP compared to today, 1000 HP at level 1 versus just 322 now, a slightly faster attack speed but with slightly lower damage, and this tanky cannon could even survive 4 hits from a charging prince. The Princess once had an even greater range of 9.5 tiles compared to the 9 tiles she has today, along with a larger splash radius. It's no surprise that she was one of the most coveted legendaries in 2016, and honestly, she is still a powerhouse even today. Skeletons used to spawn in groups of 4, which was a game changer. You could kite air troops with ease and defend against ground troops much more effectively. Their usage rate skyrocketed to the point where in 2017, they became the most used card at the top of the ladder. The Royal Giant had a 2-second deploy time, a much longer range of 7.5 tiles, and a faster attack speed, though it dealt less damage. It was considered one of the most frustrating win conditions to face because it could chip away at your towers from a safe distance. Goblin Barrel used to cost 4 Elixir back in 2016, but here's something many players might not know. It actually had area damage. This meant that it could damage both troops and towers upon landing. It was a neat feature, though probably not worth the 4 Elixir cost. Skeleton Army used to spawn an incredible 21 skeletons, but it came at a cost. Well, quite literally. It cost 4 Elixir, making it vulnerable to zap or arrows, which often meant it provided little to no value. The Elixir Collector was the most broken building in 2016. It cost just 5 Elixir, making it easier to pump quickly without being heavily punished. It had more HP, a faster production speed, and a longer lifespan, and was 1 Elixir cheaper than today. You can imagine just how overpowered this card was back then. Rage used to cost 3 Elixir and didn't deal any damage. It was a pretty insane spell because back then, once a troop entered the Rage radius, it stayed raged, up even after leaving the area. The rework with 2 Elixir with area damage made Rage much more viable in various deck archetypes. P.E.K.K.A was one of the deadliest cards back in 2016. She cost 8 Elixir, had a 3-second deployment time, and her hit points were about 20% higher than today, almost as much as a Golem. However, the long deployment time and high Elixir cost made her difficult to use effectively. Barbarians used to spawn in a group of 4, but they had enough HP to survive a fireball, which was a real game changer. The Elixir cost of the 3 Musketeers has been a roller coaster throughout their history. They were introduced at 10 Elixir, then dropped to 9, then back to 10, and eventually settled back at 9. When they cost 10 Elixir, it was incredibly risky, leaving the player with no Elixir to defend after deploying them. The constant changes in Elixir cost made them a challenging card to master.
You go down. Here goes the heal spell. Healing up the 3 Musketeers. Take a look at that heal, bringing the 3 Musketeers back up to full HP. That was the type of heal spell usage we wanted to use right there.
Goblins had only a 3-unit count from 2016 up to 2022. which was pretty bad, and players always preferred skeletons. However, goblins were much more OP back then in terms of a much faster attack interval at 0.2 seconds compared to 0.4 today, and also their deployment was 1 second compared to 1.2 seconds today. Small things like these made goblins much more effective back in the day. Arrows used to be a pretty underwhelming spell. Its projectile speed was much slower, meaning it took ages to reach its target. Instead of the 3 volleys we see today, it only shot 1, but with higher damage. Zap, on the other hand, was extremely overpowered. It dealt more damage and stunned troops for a full second, making it one of the more reliable spells in the game. Golem looked completely different in the early days, with spiked collars on its neck and a different body style. But what really stood out was its explosion. It looked like a mini sunburst, and it's not just the golem, even the golemites exploded with the same cool effect. It's definitely one of the more visually impressive cards. Musketeer used to cost 5 elixir until February of 2016, but she dealt about 25% more damage. However, her attack speed was slightly slower, balancing out her higher damage output. Fireball had an awesome card render back in the day. It looked like a blazing sun falling from the sky, which added a lot of flair to its use. If you think the Expo is annoying now, imagine what it was like back in 2016. Back then, it had a range of 13 tiles, so you could place it closer to your princess tower and still target the opponent's tower, plus it could target air troops. However, it had a painfully long deployment time of 5 seconds, which made it less practical for most players. Yeah, you heard that right. Fire spirits, plural. They used to come in a group of 3 for just 2 elixir. The value was incredible, especially against minion horde and barbarians. They were also a great offensive play at the bridge. Even though they had less HP, 2 out of 3 spirits would usually connect to the tower if left unchecked. Their biggest advantage? Countering Goblin Barrel. No matter where you placed the fire spirits, they always took care of those pesky goblins. Miner used to be an even stronger card, dealing much more damage to crown towers. When he was first introduced, he did 40% of his damage to towers, but now it's only 25%. By my calculation, Supercell nerfed Miner's crown tower damage by a total of 38.25%. I kinda hope my math is right, not exactly my strongest subject. The log used to be much tougher, pushing troops back even further. However, it rolled for a longer time, which made it tricky to use effectively on offense. Back in 2016, Mega Minion was known as Meta Minion for a reason. He had a faster attack speed of 1.3 seconds compared to 1.5 today. That made him a beast on both offense and defense. Plus, Fireball couldn't counter him, giving him immense value on the battlefield. No wonder he was in almost every deck. When Elite Barbarians were first introduced at the end of 2016, they were considered pretty useless due to their low HP and slow attack speed. But they had one thing going for them. They were extremely fast, 33% faster than they are today. Once their HP and damage got buffed, they broke the game and quickly became the most hated card in January of 2017. Tornado used to deal damage much more slowly, taking 3 ticks to eliminate skeletons. However, its duration was much longer, 3 seconds compared to just 1 second today. Goblin Gang originally had only 5 goblins, 2 spear goblins and 3 regular goblins. Surprisingly, that 1 extra goblin made a huge difference, and its removal made the card less versatile and effective in various situations. There was a time when the Executioner dealt double the damage he does today. Even though his HP was 5% lower and his range was nerfed, the card broke the game instantly. Just watching old footage of Lava Hound pushes shows how insanely overpowered he was. As someone who uses Hognado as their main deck, kinda wish he was still that OP. Did you know that the Bandit was supposed to be invisible and then appear with a dash and a stun? This idea was eventually split into 2 separate cards. First the Royal Ghost, and then the Bandit almost a year later. Night Witch used to be a terrifying card. She spawned 4 bats upon death, had a much faster attack speed, and a longer range. It's no wonder she was still considered one of the most broken cards at release. Heal Spell was a great addition to Clash Royale in 2017. It cost 3 elixir and could heal 3 musketeers back from 1 HP all the way to full health. Unfortunately, Supercell struggled to balance this card, leading to multiple nerfs, a cost reduction to 1 elixir, and eventually, it was completely removed from the game. Honestly, it's a bit sad. I really liked the heal spell. With a rework and a cost of 2 Elixir, it could have been a balanced and fun spell to play with. So, big L, Supercell. From 2017 to 2018, Cannon Card had a fast movement speed, making it a dangerous offensive threat. If you ran out of Elixir, your tower was as good as gone. However, its attack speed was slower back then, ranging between 1.2 and 1.3 seconds. Today, Cannon Card has a 25% faster attack speed, clocking in at 0.9 seconds. Mega Knight is one of the most hated cards in Clash Royale history, and for good reason. But if you think he's annoying now, just imagine how he was back in the day. Upon deployment, Mega Knight could one-shot almost every ranged troop, like Zappies, making it incredibly easy to stop any push. His spawn radius was also larger at 2.5 tiles, just like Fireball. Hog Rider? Yeah, no problem. Mega Knight could stop it without letting it get a single hit on your tower. When Zappies were first introduced, they were pretty much garbage because they couldn't target air troops. Thankfully, that was fixed just a month later. Barbarian Barrel used to have a rolling distance of 7 tiles, meaning it could even hit the King Tower. It could also knock back troops like the Log, but couldn't push back bulkier troops like Giant or Prince. On the bright side, Barb Barrel could one-shot cards like the Princess or Dark Goblin, basically any loggable card. However, it cost 3 Elixir, which made it less effective than you'd think at that price. Magic Archer's first attack time used to be a lightning-fast 0.4 seconds, compared to today's 0.7. This meant that right after deployment, there was almost no chance for the opponent to react, which was super frustrating. And by the way, check out these early concepts of Magic Archer. Pretty cool, right? Like a wizard with a better beard. Royal Recruits used to only cost 6 Elixir, 1 less than today. They were incredibly broken at release, as their low Elixir cost meant you could spam them at the bridge and win almost instantly. Fisherman used to cost 4 Elixir, which made it difficult to fit him into various deck archetypes. However, his hook mechanic was much faster at 1 second compared to 1.3 seconds today, making it easier to prevent that one hit on your tower. Timing the Fisherman was simpler back then, but even with these advantages, he wasn't very effective at 4 Elixir. Just 2 months after his release, his cost was reduced to 3, with the only nerf being an 11% decrease in his damage. This change was a huge buff that finally made him viable. Elixir Golem is often considered the most no-skill card in the game, but it's much easier to counter today than it was in 2019. Back then, the Elixir Golem didn't give you any Elixir back until its final blob stage, forcing you to overcommit on defense just to save your tower. The Elixir you eventually got back was almost pointless since you already used up all your resources defending. Firecracker used to have a 2-tile recoil, which made her extremely difficult to deal with, especially for certain cards like Bowler. The recoil would push her back far enough that Bowler couldn't reach her with his stone, making her an easy counter. If you find that Firecracker is annoying today, just imagine how irritating she was back in 2020. Goblin Drill was one of the most broken win conditions ever introduced in Clash Royale. When it first came out, there was no delay in the first goblin spawn, meaning that as soon as the drill hit the tower, a goblin would pop out immediately. On top of that, it spawned 3 goblins upon death, making the Goblin Drill meta one of the most no-skill metas in 2021. Golden Knight debuted with one of the most broken abilities of any champion in Clash Royale. His dash range was originally 6 tiles, half a tile longer than it is today. There was also several bugs with his ability that allowed him to dash back and forth and still somehow reach the tower. While he was a versatile card, he was also incredibly frustrating and unpredictable, removing a lot of skill from the game. Fortunately, these issues were later fixed, and today Golden Knight isn't nearly as dominant as he once was. Archer Queen used to maintain the same movement speed while cloaked. While that may seem like a minor detail, it actually made her much harder to deal with. Additionally, her ability had an 11-second cooldown compared to 15 seconds today, allowing players to get huge value with her ability on both defense and offense. To top it off, there was a bug where the Log could damage her while cloaked, but wouldn't push her back, making her ability that much more broken. At one point, Mighty Miner had the same movement speed as Elite Barbarians. Fast. For some reason, Supercell decided to buff Mighty Miner at the end of 2022, which made him incredibly powerful. And fun fact, the initial concept for Mighty Miner was called Chief Miner. Phoenix was one of the most broken cards upon its release. Not only could its egg respawn if it was far enough from the tower, but it would respawn with the same health and damage as before. If that wasn't enough, Phoenix also had a faster attack speed, more health, and dealt more damage than it does today. Essentially, you were getting a 4 elixir card that was worth 6 elixir in terms of power. It was insane. Monk was introduced as a 4 elixir champion, but his ability is what made him truly shine, capable of countering any ranged troop instantly. The problem wasn't that he cost 4 elixir, but the 1 elixir ability that could counter almost anything. Instead of increasing the ability's cost, Supercell decided to increase the Monk's overall cost to 5 elixir. In hindsight, kind of a smart move.
This whole push, dead. Oh god.
No. No! Stop!
Perfectly balanced. Do not touch this Supercell. It's a perfect card.
Evolved Firecracker used to have 43% more HP, making her survive arrows, with a bigger recoil, and her spark damage would stack for 3 seconds. I'm honestly not sure what they were thinking when they introduced such an irritating card. But there's a reason she was hidden behind a $150 paywall, making it nearly impossible to unlock her without spending money. Thankfully, she's balanced now, her sparks no longer stack, she dies to arrows, and she no longer has the HP boost. But those early days of broken Evolved Firecracker are hard to forget. Evolved Knight was an absolute beast at release. He had 30% more HP, which has since been removed, and his hit time was 0.9 seconds, 25% faster than today. His damage was increased by 10%, but now that's gone too, and on top of all of that, he was invincible while not attacking, with an 80% damage reduction while moving compared to 60% today. This card was beyond broken, capable of taking down Sparky on his own and then going to demolish a tower, all just for 3 elixir. Balanced? No, not at all. Little Prince is one of the most irritating champions in the game, and let's be real, we all hate
What up? Future King over here.
his voice lines. But did you know that he was originally supposed to have a much funnier voice line? One of them was, "Hey ladies," and a few more were cut last minute before his release. If you watch this video closely, you might spot which ones get deleted.
Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth, and I am the voice of Clash Royale's latest champion, Little Prince, and his bodyguard, Guardian.
Excuse me, don't you know who I am? Swifty Swipey? Watch out, guys. What up? Future King over here. Hey, ladies. Oh, Guardian. I warned you.
Protect the air for the throne!
I had one job. What? Where's my fanfare? Ow! Oh. Kneel, numbskulls.
Also, there was a wild glitch in 2024 where players could build a deck with nothing but Little Princes, which turned out to be one of the biggest glitches in Clash Royale history. Evolved archers were just as broken and annoying as the evolved knight. They used to have 25% more hit points, making them survive arrows, plus a 30% range boost, giving them a 6.5 tile reach, the same as a dart goblin. But here's the kicker. They dealt 200% damage, doubling their original stats. Imagine having 2 dart goblins on steroids that can't be countered by log or arrows. People even compared them to magic archers because they did insane damage when they locked onto a princess tower. Basically, you got 2 magic archers for 3 elixir. Just another day of crazy Clash Royale things.
Look at how much damage that's doing. Literally, bro. What is that? That is not balanced, man.
Evolved Bomber was another card that was practically a magic archer in disguise. He had a 25% HP increase, meaning he could survive arrows and even a hit from a prince. His bomb bounce was extended to 11.5 tiles, which meant that it could fly all over the arena, hitting everything in its path, and if that wasn't enough, his cycle was just 1 elixir. So you could drop an Evolved Bomber every, 30 seconds? No wonder he was still considered a win condition. Thankfully, they scraped the HP buff right before he was introduced, so he eventually became vulnerable to arrows. But of all these cards, none had quite the journey like the Rage spell. It went from being a pretty useless card to one of the best spells in the game, and that's why I want you to check out this video next, where I break down why Clash Royale had to rework Rage. So I'll see you there.